Today's text comes from the Old Testament, the book of Job, chapter 19, verses 23 through 27. In your Pew Bible, it is on page 405. Job chapter 19, 23 through 27. Oh, that my words were written down. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book. Oh, that with an iron pen and with lead they were engraved on a rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and that at the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has thus been destroyed, then in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see on my side, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. My heart faints within me. The word of the Lord. This is quite an interesting book. The book of Job is. If you feel you've gone through a tough time, I think you should maybe read through Job and then realize that tough times are relative, because what he goes through and what happens to him is hugely detrimental. And I dare say, and I apologize for using this word, his life really sucked at this point in time. He was going through a lot. To say that he's going through a lot is kind of an understatement. He's lost all of his wealth. He's lost his health. He's lost his family. And he's lost his friends, his good friends at least, or friends that would be good to him. And he's struggling. He's struggling with the eternal question of why. And even though he's struggling through all of this, it says that his skin was plagued and he would take wood and scratch his sores because he was in so much pain. He was left alone. He felt like he was going to die. Everything had been taken. His life at this moment in time during this story is really, really bad. And yet, he never crosses that line of cursing God, of hating God, of blaming God. He never goes over that line. He may skirt it a few times. He may get close to it. But for some reason, he knows that even though all of this is going wrong, everything in his life that can go wrong does go wrong. Everything that can go wrong doesn't just go a little bit wrong. It goes to the extreme, to the power of infinity, wrong and bad. And yet, he holds on. Because even though he knows that he's going through what he's going through and he's suffering what he's suffering, he is struggling to even make it through the day, he still has the audacity to come to this point in this chapter, which is only about halfway through the book, and say, I know that my Redeemer lives. He was never willing to sacrifice those things that made him who he were. He kind of figured and knew, I accumulated wealth before, wealth can come again. I had good relationships before, I can have good relationships again. But he knew that there were certain things that are a lot harder to regain. It's harder to regain faith when you've lost it. It's harder to gain or regain conscience when you've thrown it away. It's hard to regain respect if you've thrown it away and you don't even respect yourself. It's hard to regain dignity when you've trashed and spoken badly and destroyed everything that was once good in your life. He knew these things. The easiest thing for him to do, which is what his wife told him to do and what his friends told him to do, was just curse God, blame God, and just die, dude. Like, why are you continuing? So the story of Job is not like, I think for those who haven't read the Bible, you might have a perception of what the stories are about or the people are. And those of us who have read it know that it's not about superheroes and people who are amazing in the things that they do because of how great they are, but instead it is the human struggle to get closer to God. And that's what Job is. Job is going through all these things for something that he had nothing to do with. It was a cosmic event that leads to all of this happening. He was innocent. He knew it. The guy was such a godly man that he would make sacrifices for his children if they had a party, just in case they may have done something wrong or may have leaned the wrong way or done something that could be construed as wrong. He wanted to make sure that they were okay, and he would sacrifice for them in case they sinned. It wasn't even that they did something wrong. He was a godly man, a pious man, a holy man, one who was looked up to, and that's why he had so much. So he held on to that truth, knowing that he never, ever had done the things that were causing him pain. Because there is this thought that if you are going through something or struggling with something or life is just not going the way it should be going, it's on you. You did something wrong. You are suffering the consequences of your own sins. You are suffering because you did something wrong. It doesn't matter that our bodies fail us at times. You did something wrong. And that's not a new thought at all. As we see throughout the Old Testament, this was something that happened regularly. And we see here in Job, it was the same thing. His good friends, quote unquote, were telling him that he had to have done something wrong because stuff like this doesn't happen. So at some point, if somebody is continuously telling you that you have done something wrong, that's why you're going through this, at some point, you're going to believe it. But yet, Job, even though he may have wanted to believe it, even though he was leaning that way, even though he may have come to the edge of that, he never fully went in because he knew that it was not about something that he had done wrong. It was not a punishment for the things that had happened to, that he had done or caused to others. It was not something that he had done himself. It had to be something outside of him. And he held on to that. He held on to that little leaf as long as he could because he knew that he did not do anything wrong. So punishment this was not. He held on. He couldn't let go. And indeed, that's what faith is. I think too often we believe that faith is something that we have, and I feel that I have a really great faith because I have never wavered, I have never doubted, I have never struggled. So therefore my faith is amazing. But the truth is, amazing faith doesn't come in the good times. Amazing faith doesn't grow when everything is hunky-dory. Amazing faith doesn't grow on those sunny, smooth days where everything is exactly as it should be. Faith grows when it's tested. Faith grows when it's pushed. Faith grows when the storm is here and you're struggling to make it through and you want to let go. You want to jump off and just blame God and curse the world and I hate everybody. But when you hold on, that's where faith grows and matures. It doesn't grow in the easy times, I'm sorry to say. And I mean that because I have prayed for faith to grow and for the time to grow easy. But I know that faith grows in the difficult times. If we look at faith as a mere seed, As Jesus says, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can tell this mountain to move and it will move. If we look at a seed as faith, a seed has to go underground into darkness. It has to be covered and pushed down, pressure applied from all sides. It has to sit in this moist place of darkness before it can open up and grow into the tree that it has always been meant to be. Faith grows like that. It is in the difficult moments, the moments of doubt, the moments of darkness, the moments of struggle, the moments when it's like, why am I going through this? I'm a good person. I've tried the best that I can. Why am I going through this? That's when faith grows. When you're struggling through this difficult moment, that's when faith starts to move from a mere seed in the ground to start growing these little tentacles of root that start causing water to come in. And the more water that comes in, the further the roots go. Sometimes you don't see a tree or a plant until the roots are formed underground. So imagine that. Your faith may be growing, but you may not see it the way you want to see it. It may be growing underground. It's growing in darkness. The roots are growing out, getting more water, more nutrients, seeking to grow closer to God, wanting to get closer. But instead of growing out into the sun, it's growing down into the depths of who you are. Faith doesn't come as we would necessarily like it to or want it to. I know that Job didn't want to go through all of this stuff. He says it himself. And he says, I should curse you and I should do these things and I should just die. But I'm here and I'm holding on to this little bit that I have. For I know that my Redeemer lives. Even though it wasn't his debt, he knew that his Redeemer lived. And when I looked up Redeemer for a basic definition, it says to buy or pay off or clear payment, to obtain the release or restoration as from captivity or paying a ransom. And this surprised me. They even have a theological definition in dictionary.com that said, to deliver from sin and its consequences by means of a sacrifice offered for the sinner. My Redeemer lives. He was paying for something and he didn't know what it was, but he was suffering the consequences of it. But he still said, I know that my Redeemer lives. My Redeemer will pay my ransom. My Redeemer will pay my debt. My Redeemer will pay the things that need to be paid for what I'm suffering now. And I have faith that my Redeemer lives. My Redeemer. So I ask you, who is your Redeemer? And I know that we're in church. We're in a Christian church, a Baptist church, so the Sunday school answer is always Jesus. Who parted the Red Sea? Jesus. No, Moses. Oh, okay. Jesus is always the answer, though. So I know we want to say Jesus right away. And I think in theory and in theological sense, Jesus is our Redeemer. But when you look at your life, when you look at yourself, when you look at who you are and what you've been through and where you've been through, what you've been through all of this time, where you've come from. Has Jesus truly been your Redeemer? Because I know that very often we say, Jesus is my Redeemer, but we do maybe a little bit different. We'll come to church on Sunday because Jesus is our Redeemer, but we say, I'll work a little harder, I'll push a little farther, I'll go a little longer because I know I can make this right. And we take the redemption part upon ourselves thinking that we can do it. I can do this. I just have to keep a positive attitude. I have to keep my spunky way of life. I have to keep myself going because I'm so happy, and I have to keep pushing. That's how I'll make it through. But is that Jesus being your Redeemer, or you trying to redeem yourself? That's a hard question. When is Jesus your Redeemer? Is Jesus your Redeemer only when things have fallen apart, when we cry out that all so often prayer of, help me, Lord? Or why is this happening, Jesus? We know the prayers. We've been through that. We've all prayed them. But when is Jesus your Redeemer? Is Jesus your Redeemer only in the storms? Only in the difficult moments? Only in the times when it seems like you can't get out? Is that when Jesus is your Redeemer? Or is Jesus your Redeemer through all times? Through all struggles, but also through the sunny days and the clear skies, through the moments when everything is in place? Is Jesus your Redeemer there as well? I also ask you, how does your Redeemer react when you're angry or struggling? It seems like we don't dare bring to God who we really are at times. And so we'll come to God with these nice words and prayers of, Lord, I'm struggling a little bit. Can you help me? But in real relationship, intimate relationship with someone who you've grown close to, whether a sibling or a parent or a spouse or someone you're in close relationship with, is that how you talk to them? Do you talk to them in a flowery way that says, well, you know, I might be struggling, and you never fight or never have an argument or a disagreement at all? If you say that's true, then I would dare call you a liar, because we've all, especially those who are closest to us, know us and know when we are lying and when we're struggling, and push us in a way that force us to kind of bring that to the forefront. And I want you to know that that's who your Redeemer is as well. Jesus isn't one who wants the flowery words. Jesus is the one who wants to be there alongside you, to hear those difficult moments, to say, I'm tired of this. It's okay. God has thick skin. God can take it. God created the universe and all that is in it, so God knows. You don't have to bring it in a flowery way. You don't have to bring it in a way that's not true to what's going on or how you're feeling. God can take the feelings that you have. And it's helpful because when we bring it out, we're able to analyze and understand it because it's come to the forefront. When we push it down and hold it down, it's detrimental to us. It's detrimental to us not only in a way that causes us to compartmentalize and fracture our own psyche, but it also can be detrimental to us in a very physical way. We can cause stress causes ulcers and cancers and all these other things, and the stress just continues to grow the more you try to hold down and try to push it and keep it down. So God, the same Redeemer who Job said, I know my Redeemer lives, is the same God who's here now today with us, and it's the same God who can take whatever it is that you have to dish out so that you can be free of these things that are holding you down. You can't say, I know my Redeemer lives, and then not come to God like that. To have these flowery words that mean nothing because they're just empty words. But to have sighs of grief and be able to come before the Lord and present yourself and say, you know what, I'm doubting, I'm struggling, depression has gotten me on the verge. I feel like I'm drowning from this anxiety. I feel like I can't anymore. God is okay with that. God wants to be there with you, alongside you. God is the one who provides the hope that keeps you going, even when you don't understand how or why. And others may look at you and say, I don't know how you keep doing this. It's because I know that my Redeemer lives. Above all things, I know that my Redeemer lives. And I know that at the last, he will stand upon the earth. So as you struggle, don't struggle alone. If you don't want to share with someone else, your Redeemer wants you to share with him. If you're afraid to share it with someone else, come to your Redeemer. Come to the one who paid the price for you. Come to the one whose love was so great that he was willing to be whipped and go to a cross so that you and I, all this time later, have the chance and the freedom to grow in relationship with God. The Redeemer, your Redeemer, is not some person or thing out there. The Redeemer, your Redeemer, is right here alongside and within, and can take whatever you have that you think no one else can take. God can take that. Jesus took the weight of all sin for all time upon his shoulders. What makes you think he can't handle your little problems here today? Jesus took what was broken in creation, the sin that came in through Adam and Eve, and put it upon himself, sacrificed it and put it on the cross. And even though he bore all that weight, he carried all that sin, he was struck, he was killed, he died on that Friday. All of that couldn't hold him down for more than a day or two. Because on the third day he got up. And we know today that our Redeemer lives. So I encourage you to trust that your Redeemer lives. I encourage you to take the chance, because your Redeemer can take whatever it is that you have to give. To build that relationship, to rebuild your heart and mind, to come back to that healing place and center, to become truly the person that God has called you to be. I may not know much, but I do know this. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that your Redeemer lives. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he can take whatever it is that we bring forth to him. So let us do so.